I just want to draw your attention to those firms and individuals that refuse to repay their loans. The central bank a few weeks ago released a list and said the banks should not lend to these companies and these people. What's your view about this?
Well, we weren't even looking at that when I gave an example of the fact that some are in the habit of borrowing money from one bank and moving to another.
And for a number of years, they haven't repaid.
Of course, for a number of years.
Part of their actions could be regarded as part of the reasons why we have the banking crisis.
Yeah.
Billions of naira not being returned to the banks, and right now they're still not being able to pay those loans.
No, what central bank has done is to implement a policy which of course exists in the banking industry. One of the guidelines for lending in the banking sector as a whole is that if you have a borrower who is owing a particular bank and that borrower approaches your own bank, don't do what? Don't lend. That's why you carry out
you must share information, for instance.
Yeah, so what the central bank has done is to intervene directly and say, look, enough of this, and we have this list. Until they pay, they can't borrow.
What can be done to ensure they pay? Because it's been lingering for a number of years, and it's as if these people are elusive. The companies.
I can't preempt what AMCON. Don't forget that most of those loans have been purchased by AMCON. So AMCON has put in place, I was reading in the papers, AMCON has put in place measures, to collect some of those outstandings, which are referred to as bad loans, which they have purchased in the first instance. So they will have ways of tackling that. But I can tell you, the central bank equally coming to intervene complements what AMCON intends to do. I give you an example of, I think it was Otedola also, who immediately negotiated and then possibly...
For some reasons, we're not able to confirm that action.
I read it in the papers.
We're not able to confirm that because we try to put a call through.
But what is important is that those loans will be worked out.
Well, because we try to put a call through to AMCON itself to find out if indeed that transaction took place in terms of some negotiations to say, okay, I'll pay this amount, or rather I'll finish paying at this point, but we're not able to confirm that.
So we heard from you journalists.
Okay, let's look at the foreign exchange market. Just wrapping up very soon. We've seen the naira firming in the past few weeks. Of course, the central bank has been trying to meet dollar demand in the past few weeks, and we've seen sales from foreign oil corporations, and selling that, and that way boosting the value of the naira to the dollar. But in your view, how did the naira fare? How did it fare?
It has fared well. A number of things. You take a look at our external reserve; is rising, and significantly from what it used to be. At about 30. I think about 34 billion US dollars, and so the last one I had is 41. It has risen to 41.18, which a few days, as at the end of September. Even the one given yesterday was 41.33. That's one. Secondly, the oil market itself. On the average, oil price had been at about 113 dollar to per barrel. Wow. So that is quite it's gratifying. Thirdly, like we said, because of the openness and the more the openness and the transparent nature of our market, especially the bonds market, which international investors are interested in, a lot of dollar inflows, is coming into the
into that market,
into that market, and so that's why the JP Morgan's listing has actually bolstered whatever activities we've had before now. So all of this put together, obviously,
Okay.
that's what has made the market to be relatively stable. And then you have the naira even firming up marginally.
I think the last figure we're getting from your markets is that the naira traded at 156 naira 43 kobo to the US dollar.
Yeah.
But let's look at the premium between the central bank and the parallel markets, the rates. We've seen in August, for instance, I have a data here from August saying that at the end of August, that's gap, so to speak, lowered to 6.7% from 7.1% recorded at the end of July.
Yeah.
What does that really say about the naira, the exchange rate value?
No, what you are not in fact that's the international benchmark is 5%. So it has busted that. I mean, as at August, it busted that, and that
actually dropped from 7.1% to 6.7%.
International benchmark is 5%. In other words, once it is more than 5%, it is not good for the market, because you now have people buying money at the official market and then round tripping
the parallel
market. But that happened, when you had volatility in the foreign exchange market, the 7 point something, and that was when the central bank had to come up with different policies to checkmate, the pressure on that in that market. So what you are likely to have now is, by the time we compute the percentage, it's going to be lower than 5%, and that is good for the market. You can't, as long as naira is firming up, or even if it remains at what we have now relative to the USD, then you are not likely to have speculative activities.
I hope we can just talk about one more issue before I wrap up and let you go. Let's look at the bond market. We've made reference to the JP Morgan index, but we've seen increased activities in the bond market, and the federal government is still very much active in that market. And there's been the call for corporate organizations. We've not seen much of the participation. The corporate bond market has not been as active as it should be, or as active as the FGN bond market has been. For instance, we saw how the government was able to raise 75 billion naira in August, and we've seen that at the same as July. Very high figure, so to speak. But what is the problem? Why aren't we seeing the same level of participation? Maybe not exactly the same, but something very similar to that in the corporate bond markets.
It's our commentary about the market generally. It is believed that the pricing in that market is
the yields,
not yield, the price
itself.
Because as long as interest rates is upwards, then the price of bonds will remain.
That's the benchmark rate of the central bank, I mean.
Because with the MPR at 12, you can't invest your money in any instrument that will give you something lower. That's the point we're making, because that will affect the treasury-based market and other instruments issued by the. But what I'm saying is this: generally, if corporate bodies go to the international market to borrow, you have to borrow at a higher rate than the federal government of Nigeria. And so that might translate. Don't forget, the bonds market is a longer term market. That will mean that you, over a long period of time, you can get stocked with very high interest rate, which you have to service when your coupon rates or whatever. But what we have seen is that we have seen the government crowding out the private sector.
Is it that they were not? They didn't have the muscle, the same muscle.
No, can you
that the government had?
If government is borrowing at very high rate, I mean, this is can the private sector compete with the government in terms of
liquidity?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
It's not.
I think this is an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
And
one other major thing which you take a look at, there is a skewed. Of course, there is a kind of anomaly now. What we need more of longer term funds in the country as opposed to shorter term funds.
Okay.
But interest rate structure now,
it's not the short term.
Yeah, it's not just
geared towards the long term.
Yeah.